Hello and welcome to today's webinar. We are so excited that you've joined us. I am Julie Matusik, and I am the Senior Manager of Standards Training and Implementation here at the National Family Support Network, and I will be presenting today's webinar. If you are joining us online, you can listen directly through your computer speakers. If you've joined via the phone number provided by Zoom, your line has been muted to reduce background noise. And for those of you that are online, you'll see that there is going to be a link to the handouts here in just a moment. Cheryl's going to put those in the chat for us so you can access the handouts at any time. And we also invite you to put questions into the Q&A section at any time. So you can feel free to put some comments in the chat if you have something that you'd like to put in there, reactions and such. But if you put questions in the Q&A, we'll make sure we don't miss them. If you are having any tech issues at all, we have our tech support person here with us today, Cheryl, and she would be happy to help you if you'd like to private message her. And I will try to get to all of the questions at the end of the webinar today, but if we are unable to, someone from the national network will follow up with you after the webinar. And also want to mention too that today's PowerPoint, as well as the handouts and the recording of today's webinar, will be on the Webinar Wednesday page of the National Network website by this time tomorrow afternoon. So lastly, when you exit today's webinar, an evaluation will automatically appear on your screen. And we ask that you take a moment to complete that, as it helps inform future webinars and provide valuable feedback. So a little bit of intro information there to kick us off. Now we would love to see who we have with us today. So you can see we've divided the United States into regions. So take a moment to look at that map. And we are going to launch a poll, and then you can let us know which region you're from. And there will be options on there for outside of the United States as well. Let's see who is with us today. All right, take about 5 more seconds and let us know where you're joining us from if you haven't responded just yet. All right, let's see those results. Awesome. Well, looks like we have all corners of the United States represented today. That is awesome. With our strongest representation, almost half of you from the West Coast. So very cool. Great. So glad that you're all here today. We have a couple other questions for you as well. So this next one is about your affiliation. So let us know if you're joining us from a family resource center or a family resource center network, or maybe you work for another type of family support program, or maybe education. And you'll see we've broken down government into 2 different areas there, or maybe you're a private funder. And of course, we have other catch-all. Take just about 5 more seconds if you haven't responded just yet, and let us know what your affiliation is. All right, let's see those results. Wonderful. We have almost all of the groups here represented. That is great. Great diversity here. It looks like our strongest representation is from family resource centers and those family support programs. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for responding to that poll. And one last poll for you. And this one is your role. So which level are you working at? Are you working at the policy systems level? Are you working at the management level? Are you working at the program and direct service level? And of course, we have the other as well. Take a few more seconds here and let us know if you haven't had a chance to yet. All right, let's see those results. All right, wonderful. Looks like we have some great diversity here as well, with our strongest representation being at the program direct service level. Wonderful. Well, thanks again for responding to those polls. It's wonderful to see who is here on this webinar with us today. All right, let's dive in. So, over the last decade, the National Family Support Network has quadrupled in size. So we started out with 8 states that were green on this map at the time. And since then, we have grown to grown to 37 member networks that represent more than 3,000 family resource centers that are serving more than 2 million of our families across the nation annually. So take a peek here. This is our current membership. Our mission is to promote positive outcomes for all children, families, and communities by leveraging the collective impact of state family resource center networks in championing quality family support and strengthening practices and policies. So we especially would love to connect with any representatives from any state that is not currently green on that map. So if you represent one of those, definitely please reach out to us. Our vision, in short, is by turning that whole map green. We want to ensure that all families across the country have access to quality family support programs in their own communities that are provided by family resource centers that are supported by strong networks. And the national network has 3 areas of work. So the first is connecting and convening member networks to enhance their effectiveness. So increasing the connectedness amongst members for peer learning and for mutual support. The second area is promoting family support best practice and evaluation. So raising awareness of what quality family support is and promoting a common language, standards, and evaluation of it through the national implementation of the standards of quality for family strengthening and support. And the third area of work is raising the visibility of the value and the impact of family strengthening and support networks in order to strengthen and increase support for families. Right. So let's take a look at our roadmap for our time together today. So we'll kick off with continuing with some background information of the standards, and then we'll provide a standards overview. And we'll talk about standards implementation about the program level and the network level. I know we have both represented here, so you'll both be able to resonate with what that might look like in your programs or in your system. And then we will have time for questions and answers at the end. Be sure to be entering those in throughout the webinar in that Q&A portion of the Zoom console throughout the webinar. And we will share some resources and event opportunities, events that are available to you through the national network at the end of the webinar. And then lastly, that evaluation will pop up when you exit. So appreciate your taking the time to complete that. So when we are talking about these standards, our focus is on families who are responsible for raising children. So these families consist of at least one adult and one child who are emotionally related biologically or maybe legally. And families may consist of one parent, two parents, grandparents, foster parents, or legal guardians, or they may arise from a need for mutual support. The standards timeline you can see here is mapped out on this slide. So back in 2012, the California network developed the standards of quality. And then in 2013, they were adopted for national implementation by the National Family Support Network. And then in 2020, the national network engaged member networks from across the country, as well as parent leaders and Canadian family support organizations, as well as the Center for the Study of Social Policy, to review and revise the standards with a focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and relevance for both the United States and Canada. And then in 2021, this new version was approved by the National Family Support Network membership. So Why are these standards important? They are important because they help ensure that families are supported and strengthened through quality practice. They also create a common language and expectations across different types of family strengthening programs. And they're designed to be used by all stakeholders. So, public departments, foundations, community based organizations, families all coming together and using these as a tool for planning, providing, and assessing quality practice. And also want to emphasize that we are not selling these standards. These standards are available to everyone to download for free. We want everyone to have access to and be able to think about quality work with families. So if you go to the website, you can download the standards there. You can download the implementation tools there. They are there for you to access. Right. So let's take a look at this. So, um, thinking about how you can use the standards, thinking back to what group you were in that poll earlier today. So, I know we definitely have family strengthening and support programs here, lots of family resource centers represented. So, you can use the standards as a blueprint for implementing best practice and for self assessment and to demonstrate quality. And direct service staff. I believe we have some represented here as well. So you can use the standards to reflect on and enhance your work with families. And I know we also have the network level represented here also. So you could use the standards for quality assurance, for training and technical assistance, and to adopt as an expectation for membership. Not sure if we have any policymakers here today, but if so, you can use the standards to endorse for application in your area of influence. And funders. Funders, you can use the standards to integrate into requests for proposals, for monitoring, and for quality assurance. And families. Families can partner with programs to apply the standards and to provide feedback about how well the program is applying the standards. So, applying the standards at the program level requires the commitment and the support of all levels of program responsibility. So, it's not something an executive director could do by herself. It's not something that a direct service staff or a parent leader could do by himself. It's all of these groups. So, executive directors, managers, coordinators, direct service staff, parent leaders, and families all coming together to implement these standards at the program level. These standards uniquely integrate and operationalize two key frameworks. So, the principles of family support practice is the first one that was developed by Family Support America. And the second is the research based, evidence informed strengthening families protective factor framework and its approach that was developed by the Center for the Study of Social Policy. So let's take a look at the principles. So we are going to talk about these principles, and we have a poll, and we're curious how many of you have heard of these principles before today? How many of you have heard of these before today? Take just another moment and let us know. All right, take about 2 more minutes, 2 more seconds, not 2 more minutes, 2 more seconds, and let us know if you've heard of these yet. All right. Okay, about 50-50 split. That's pretty typical. Well, for those of you that have said yes, this may be a little review. And for those of you that haven't, you'll be up to speed in just a couple minutes here. All right, so let's take a look at these principles. So these principles were developed by a national organization, Family Support America, back in 1981. So that organization has sunset since then, but this framework very much continues to guide and frame our field today. Let's look at the first principle, and that is that the staff and families work together in relationships based on equality and on respect. So To us, while this principle may not seem so revolutionary today, at the time it was written, it presented quite a challenge to the system. At the time, the prevailing wisdom was that the staff were the experts with their education, their knowledge, and experience, and that their goal was to quote unquote fix the problem family. But this principle, it challenged that notion, and it says that the staff and families are equal. So the staff certainly do come to the table with their education, their knowledge, and experience. But the families, they also bring their own strengths and resources and are the most knowledgeable on their own experiences. And it's by working as partners in relationships based on equality and respect that we will achieve the best outcomes for the families. Let's take a look at the second principle here. So the second principle says that staff enhance families' capacity to support the growth and development of all family members, adults, youth, and children. So this principle, it emphasizes that we in this family support field, we're looking at the whole family, not just the individual. So if one person, one family member comes to our activities, we want to be asking about and inviting other members of the family as well. We know that when multiple family members are involved, that family will be more likely to have better outcomes. The third principle says that families are resources to their own members, to other families, and to programs, as well as to their communities. So, unique to this field, unique to this family support perspective, is that we don't see staff as having all of the answers or doing all of the work to support families. Families themselves are encouraged to support other families. And so, there's a strong emphasis on connecting families to share resources such as information and peer support. Let's look at the next few principles here. So, the fourth principle says that programs affirm and strengthen families' cultural, racial, and linguistic identities and enhance their ability to function in a multicultural society. So, this principle is commonly referred to as the diversity principle, and it has two parts. So, the first is about respecting and welcoming the diversity that families bring. So, whether it's linguistic, cultural, family structure, things like that. And then the second part is about preparing them for and connecting them with the larger community where they are naturally going to interact with people that are very different from themselves. And so this supports them to fully participate in our diverse society in which we live. The fifth principle says that programs are embedded in their communities and contribute to the community building process. So, family support programs do not see themselves as as being simply social service providers, but as community builders as well. So, by strengthening families, they make a key contribution to the health of their communities. And they also work to develop families' responsibility and leadership for strengthening and building their communities. All right, the sixth principle says that programs advocate with families for services and systems that are fair and responsive and accountable to the families served. So take a second to just think about some of the major systems that families commonly interact with. So maybe education, the healthcare system, the legal system. Are all of these systems fair and responsive and accountable? Often not. So that's where our work comes in as family support providers to work with families to help improve these systems. And the last three principles. So the seventh principle says that practitioners work with families to mobilize formal and informal resources to support family development. So there is a strong emphasis in the family support field on resources. And the most common type of family support program is called a family resource center. So you can see right in the name The emphasis is on resources. And so while no one program could directly provide all of the supports that a family might need, it's our responsibility to know how to connect them to them. Let's look at the eighth principle. So this says that programs are flexible and continually responsive to the emerging family and community issues. So the concept of flexibility and responsiveness are so important in this family support field because neighborhoods and communities change. A neighborhood that is majority Latino today may be majority Asian in 5 years, and issues emerge that significantly affect families, such as the economic downturn, the pandemic, natural disasters. And so programs need to be flexible and responsive to these changes. And the last principle, it says that these principles of family support are modeled in all program activities, including planning, governance, and administration. So this is kind of a catch-all principle because it says that all of the above principles should be applied in everything that we are doing. So planning, governance, and administration. And these principles have implications for how we develop our programs, how they are led, and how we support our staff. Let's take a look at the second framework that the standards are based upon, and it's the Strengthening Families Protective Factor Framework, or the 5 protective factors. You may have heard of them before today. So curious how many of you have heard of them before today. We're going to launch a poll here and see how many of you have heard of this framework before today. Oh, maybe that poll isn't working for us. That's okay. If you just want to let us know in the chat, feel free to throw a yes. Oh, wait, never mind. There it is. There it is. Sometimes technical difficulties, right? Take a few more seconds here so we can hear from as many folks as possible. If you've heard of this protective factor framework before today. All right, let's see those results. All righty. But looks like about 71% of you have heard of them. Awesome. And for those of you that have not, no big deal. We are going to review them now. So going to see more familiar here in a moment. So this framework was developed by the Center for the Study of Social Policy in 2005, and it is research-based and evidence-informed. And it also has been shown to increase family stability, enhance child development, and reduce the likelihood of child abuse and neglect. And let's take a look at these 5 protective factors. So here you can see what they are. So parental resilience, social connections, concrete support in times of need, knowledge of parenting and child development, and the social and emotional competence of children. So we won't go into these in significant detail, but if you're interested in learning more about them, we invite you to visit CSSP's website and click on Strengthening Families, and you'll be able to learn all about them. There's so much information on their website to learn about this framework. All right, so now that we have learned about the 2 frameworks that the standards are based upon, we are going to look at the standards themselves. And so the standards are divided into 5 key areas of practice. And so you can see them here on the slide. So we have family centeredness, family strengthening, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and community strengthening and evaluation. So those are the 5 areas of quality practice that the standards focus on. Within the standards, you'll find 15 different standards, and each standard includes 1 to 2 sets of indicators of both foundational quality and high quality. So the foundational quality indicator, it demonstrates the basic application of the standard. And then the programs build upon foundational quality indicators in order to achieve high quality indicators, which represents deeper integration into the program, into the standard. And so let's look at the standards. And so after you see the indicators, you'll see examples. And so each indicator is followed by 2 to 4 examples from the field that illustrate its application. So these examples that you'll see are provided as illustrators and are not meant to be an exhaustive checklist or limited to the one-sided. In the certification training on the standards, a significant focus is on participants having the opportunity to think of their own examples that demonstrate the indicators in ways relevant to their own programs. And as programs are applying these standards, they are encouraged to identify their own examples that demonstrate the indicators in ways that are relevant to their own communities. All right. So let's talk about these quality indicators. So foundational quality indicators create a solid foundation for family support and strengthening programs. So that's the start. That's the foundation. And these foundational quality indicators are designed to be met within the basic resources of a typical family support and strengthening program. And then high quality indicators are built upon foundational quality being in place first. We aren't just jumping to high quality, we need that solid foundation under us. And programs are encouraged to strive to meet high quality indicators in order to serve families most effectively. Some high quality indicators may require additional capacity building or additional resources to meet. So let's look at the quality continuum along the bottom here. So we start with foundational quality not yet addressed, and then we are approaching high quality. And then in the middle there, we meet foundational quality. So that is where quality begins. And then we continue along this continuum to approach high quality and to meet both foundational and high quality. So you'll see at the bottom that the arrow, it keeps going. And you'll see that after we've already met foundational and high. So this is because quality improvement is an ongoing continuous process. So you won't ever hear the term maximum quality. We say foundational and high, but never maximum or low quality. So implementing the standards, it's very much a developmental process, and it's common that programs may see aspects of their work at different points along the quality continuum. So as we go through the standards, as you dive into them further after today, you may determine that you are already doing quality work in some areas, and then maybe you'll also be able to identify areas to work on further. So when we talk about moving from foundational to high, for the first 4 sections of the standards, this is the arrow that we are using to explain the movement from foundational quality to high quality. So on the left, we see foundational quality, and then on the right, we see high quality, which represents deeper integration of the standard into the program. So what moves foundational to high quality are the elements in the arrow. So the first is formal structure. So this is design, policies, procedures, and intentional strategies with committed resources that ensure consistency of practice. And then we have staff training. So this is staff training, particularly to support the implementation of the standard. And then we have family partnership. So this is partnering with families in the implementation of the standard. So each of these elements helps ensure that the standards are more deeply integrated into program practice. So for example, at foundational quality, we may do something that's good practice, which is great, but how can we ensure that it wasn't just a one-time occurrence? And then at high quality, we've actually set up systems, training, and or we have partnered with families to ensure that it continues to happen. So the particular elements and the number of elements needed for high quality differ for various indicator pairs. So sometimes it's 1, sometimes it's 2, and sometimes it's all three, but it's never anything other than these three that move us to high quality. So let's take a look here at this, where you'll see an actual standard and indicator pair from the standards document. So the standard here is that the program engages families to participate in program development and implementation. The foundational quality indicator is that the program solicits input from families to shape and plan the program and services. And then we see in the middle, there's formal structure and family partnership that are moving us to high quality. Those are the arrow elements. And then the high quality indicator says that the program's design supports partnering with families to have an active role in the development and implementation of the program. So as you can see, formal structure and family partnership are what are moving us to high quality here. All right, so this is the arrow for the evaluation section. Evaluation is so important that it gets its very own arrow. So as with the arrow that we see in the first four sections of the standards, we see foundational quality on the left and high quality on the right, which represents that deeper integration into the program. So the one thing that's different though is what the elements are within the arrow. So for the evaluation section, the elements are there on the screen. So the first is data analysis. So collecting data is a start, and that's the foundation, but then analyzing the data is what moves us to high quality. And then sharing evaluation results. So we are sharing these results with various stakeholders. So maybe the families that we're working with. And program modification. This means changing the program as a result of what we learned from evaluation. So we aren't just doing evaluation for evaluation's sake, we're actually doing something about it and with this data. So let's take a look at the tools. As we mentioned, these are free for everyone to download and be able to use and think about quality work in your organizations. Let's talk about what they are so you know what to look for. So the first one is the program self-assessment tool. So this is designed to be used as by program teams of managers, direct service staff, parent leaders, to come together and reflect on standards implementation and quality improvement. And so this is designed to be used as a critical thinking exercise by program teams. So managers, direct service staff, parent leaders, all coming together. And it is recommended that all team members involved in using this tool be trained on the standards first. All right, so this staff self-reflection checklist is the next one we'll talk about. And this consists of 18 reflection questions for staff members to use as an ongoing reminder of how to implement the standards. And so staff are encouraged to put this in a place where they'll see it often. Back in my family resource center days, I literally had it above my desk. So encourage you to have it somewhere where you'll be able to see it regularly. And the last tool that we'll talk about is the standards participant survey. So this is 18 questions for program participants to indicate how well the program is meeting the standards from the family's perspective. And this shows how well it's meeting the standards from the participant's point of view. So it's not a typical satisfaction survey that you might initially think about. The questions mirror those on the staff checklist. So if the staff members have that somewhere where they can see it all the time and are mindful of these questions, the program participants are likely to give the program high scores. And this tool is actually now available in English, Spanish, and Chinese on the website. So you can download those there. There's even a fillable version of that program self-assessment tool. So I encourage you to check those out and download them for free on the website. So, when we talk about training, it's very much a fundamental strategy for implementing the standards effectively. So, the certification training that is offered in person or virtual, and it's designed for all management and direct service staff, as well as funders. And participants receive a certificate that is valid for 2 years. And so we are so glad that you are here for this webinar. And it's a wonderful place to get your feet wet and learn all about the standards. But just as a reminder, this is not the training. In order to receive a certificate, you'd want to participate in the certification training. So this certification training is conducted by pairs of trained trainers from member networks of the National Family Support Network. And networks, funders, and other stakeholders can also contract with the national network to host a certification training for programs in your area if there's not standards trainers yet in your state. So, programs are highly encouraged to come as teams of both management and direct service staff to this training because successful application of the standards, it does require the commitment and the support of all levels of program responsibility. And with the certification training, individuals are certified, so not organizations, it's the individuals, which integrates the standards into everyone's daily work and provides a professional credential for staff as well. And all trainings are live because the group work and that peer sharing are so valuable to the process of learning about the standards. They are currently offered virtually, and our training committee is currently looking at moving it into offering in-person options again as well. Let's talk about the Training of Trainers Institute. So, this is 4 days in person or 5-day virtual training for representatives of national network member networks to be able to conduct the certification training in their area, in their state. So, only networks that are only representatives, sorry, of member networks are trained to be trainers, which supports that network's capacity building, and it established as a unique and ongoing and essential role for them within their system of support for families in their state. All right, so let's take a look. You can see here on this map where the standards have been in the past decade. And you can see there have been over 13,000 people trained on the standards currently. There's been over 500 trainings now across the country over the past decade. And there are currently over 100 trainers that are delivering these trainings. Across the country in our member network. So you can see here which states have had the standards, which haven't yet, which states have trainers, and which don't have them yet. And here on this slide, you can see a couple of the statistics here just from the training surveys that are sent out after the training. So you can see that participants are reporting that their work is enhanced by working with the standards, and they're also reporting that they're using those tools as well. On this next slide, you can see a few quotes that come to us from actual training participants across the country. I'll give you just a moment to read those. So as you can see here, the standards help validate existing work by benchmarking it to national best practice. So let's look at this together. So the standards help support network development. And so networks have actually formed and expanded through the standard certification training. So for example, in the state of Arizona, the standards provided a common language for diverse providers across the state and established a key role for the Maricopa Family Support Alliance in promoting quality practice within their system of care. And as a result, this alliance grew from 21 to 72 agencies in just a few short years. So incredible. And so the networks are also strengthened. They strengthen their capacity and their sustainability through developing trained trainers. And all funds that are generated through the standard certification training are invested back into supporting networks. And in order to ensure the accessibility and affordability of the standard certification training, networks with trained trainers may charge up to $150. So anywhere up to $150 they are able to charge. So intentionally keeping it affordable for everyone. Let's take a look at this tool. This is our program implementation tool. So for those of you that are here today that said you represent a family resource center or a family support program, this would be the implementation tool that you would use. And so you can see along the top, there are steps and there are sample activities and the resources available to you to implement the standards at the program level, as well as the potential cost down at the bottom. So by being here today, you're well on your way. You are in that initial prepare phase here along the left. And once you attend a certification training, you'll be all the way to step 3. So lots of things to think about with implementing these standards. And again, we encourage you to download this in the handout section. That Cheryl linked in the chat, and we'll ask her to drop again in the chat when she has a moment, but you'll be able to access the handouts there. So would love to take a minute to share. So prior to joining the National Family Support Network 4 years ago, I managed a family resource center here in Corning, New York. And this is the Nanihood Family Resource Center. So when I began working at this family resource centers, we were implementing the protective factors. So at the time, that's what we were doing, as were the other family resource centers across the state. That was what we were doing. So uh, we used the protective factor survey. We provided drop-in play opportunities. You can see the photo there of the space. We had parent-child groups and activities, had parent education opportunities, parent groups. We did the ages and stages questionnaire screening. We provided information and referrals for families. We had a supervised visitation program and hosted many community events as well. So we were doing great work at the center, serving families the best way that we knew how at the time. And then in 2016, the New York State Family Resource Center Network, they became members of the National Family Support Network and contracted with the National Family Support Network to bring the standards certification training to New York State. So managers, directors, direct service staff, we all piled in cars at the time and headed to the state to participate in the certification training. And then 12 of us became trained trainers on the standards to create more capacity in the state as we began implementing these standards. So through implementing these standards, our Family Resource Center saw that the standards were very much enhancing the work that we were already doing. And so we were actually able to increase childcare offerings for parent education classes to better meet parents' needs and ensure that that we were reducing as many barriers to participation as possible. We also intentionally improve partnership with parents and with families. And the staff began to work with families more to complete parent identified goals. and their needs and help them. Um, so recognizing that parents are the experts on their families. So working in partnership with them. And so these standards, they also gave us the structure to increase the formal structure around our outreach strategies. So we very much felt like we were working smarter, not harder with our efforts. And so these standards also helped us to improve our database system and included the analysis of the data, making sure that our programs are doing what we actually wanted them to do, what we sought out for them to achieve. So these standards helped us to create new opportunities to educate parents on advocacy and on leadership. And also through adopting the standards, we realized how crucial it is to have parents formally at the table and to plan the program, to be part of that. And so just shoot 2 short months after participating in the standard certification training, I had an opportunity to participate in the inaugural Developing and Sustaining Effective Parent Advisory Committee training that's offered by the National Network. So that was so exciting to be able to participate in that and gather the concrete tools that were needed to start a parent advisory committee. And so once we started that parent advisory committee, it was so exciting to see the enhanced ownership that families now had. So let's look one level up. I know we had lots of folks here at the program level, at the Family Resource Center level, that family support program level, and I know we had representation from the network level as well. So if you are at the network level, a Family Resource Center network, this would be the tool that you would use to implement the standard. So similar to the other one, looks almost identical. It has the steps, sample activities, and resources and cost associated with each of these steps in it here. And again, this is in the handout section of the Zoom chat box Cheryl put in there in the chat just a few minutes ago. So encourage you to take a peek at the handouts and download this implementation tool. This is also on the standards implementation page of the National Network website, if that's easier, if you were already on the website earlier today. So take a peek at this, similarly starting with things like participating in the standards overview presentation. So step 1, check. Lots more things to look at here as you continue along the journey of thinking about the standards in your network. So want to share just a little bit more about the standards implementation at the network level here in New York State. So I had mentioned about us becoming members of the national network, which of course gave us the ability to develop trained trainers. And then so we immediately began training on the standards across the state. The New York State Network at the time was also the funder of the family resource centers within the state. So they intentionally wrote the standards in as one of their grantee requirements to ensure the quality and consistency of program across the state. So all programs across the state began using that standards implementation um, tool and that program self-assessment tool, particularly annually. So we were doing that annually as FRC teams across the state. And so now, fast forward a few years later, the network continues today to use the standards as a catalyst for enhancing their work with families across the state. Oh, I'm sorry to hear the link isn't working. We will check that out. And if we can't get it to work for some reason, it will be available on the National Network website by the end of the day tomorrow. You'll be able to access all of these handouts there as well. Sorry for the difficulty there. So just want to share with you at a very high level a couple other network implementation examples here. So this one comes from one network that demonstrates how they are implementing these standards as a network as well. So they use a three-pronged approach, and this strategy integrates them into training, evaluation, and membership. And so each network is encouraged to develop their own network level implementation plan. And so this diagram illustrates how the Colorado Network has tiered their trainings for Family Resource Center staff. So all staff at the center, regardless of their role, are completing the certification training. That's their foundation. That's their foundation of their staff training. And then the staff that are working with families and their supervisors complete a free 14-hour online strengthening families training that is offered by the Children's Trust Fund Alliance. And then they also use the family development credential for those that are working more closely with families. So as you're thinking about these standards, the why might you want to consider adopting the standards? I'm sure you've heard a couple of highlights throughout, but just want to kind of synthesize here. So some considerations to think about. So a deepening practice and establishing a common language and developing partnership opportunities across different types of programs. And also, you can use these standards to utilize shared measurement systems. And it's something concrete that we can do to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion as well. And it's so exciting to be part of a national movement with your cousins across the country. So very exciting. And so a lot of times after these webinars, we would get emails and say, this sounds awesome. We want to learn more. What next? So we developed this slide so you can think about what next and just think about, we gave you some sample steps here to consider as your next step. So if you haven't already, download the standards and review them. So they're down there. Again, they're offered for free. Access them, download that document, take some time to look over them. And the program and network implementation continuum, download those and see what your possible next steps might be there, depending on if you're at the program or network level. And then we invite you to participate in a standard certification training that is either offered by your state or the national network if you don't have trainers in your state yet. And for funders, if you are in a state without networks currently offering the standards, you can review the standards training page and learn how to bring the standards to your state. So if you go to this nationalfamilysupportnetwork.org, sorry, there's no the, it's nationalfamilysupportnetwork.org. And then if you hover over standards at the top, drop down to certification trainings, you'll be able to see where it's offered across the country and learn more about bringing it to your state. And so now we've come to the time where we'll remind you to put your questions in the Q&A portion of the Zoom console. And let's see here. Take just a moment to enter in those questions. I'm gonna, while you're entering in your questions, I'm gonna share some of those resources and opportunities that are available to you through the National Network. So we have, you obviously heard a little bit about at least today's webinar because you're here today. We have, as an ongoing offering, Webinar Wednesdays. So this one is offered monthly. Some months we highlight 4 times a year, actually quarterly. We highlight our member networks and the valuable work that they're doing with the standards. So you can see recordings of those online. We'll be highlighting Georgia in December, so check that out. But coming up later this month, we have a webinar on family resource centers and family resource center networks. And so that's coming up on the 12th. And then later this month, we will be spotlighting the Maryland Family Network and the valuable work that they are doing. So like I mentioned, there's tons of recordings on the website as well. If you want to learn, all about the standards or want to learn more about FRCs or member networks, there's tons of information on the website. So encourage you to check that out if you haven't already. And we had talked about the certification trainings. We offer it at the National Network monthly and encourage you to check it out. It's a great way to immerse yourself in the standards. These trainings are offered divided into 2 days. So gives you a chance to spread it out a little bit. And this is the certification training. So check this out. And there's still some openings for the October one, and we did open registration for the November one as well. They're typically the fourth Thursday and Friday of each month, but November and December are a bit different because of the holidays. So encourage you to check that out. And I also had mentioned talking about, thinking about how to effectively engage families and what that looks like in elevating parent voice in our programs and in our network. So this training is excellent, and it is the Developing and Sustaining Effective Parent Advisory Committee training. So whether you're wanting to strengthen an existing parent advisory committee or you're wanting to start a new one, this training gives you the tools to know how to do that and where to begin. Like literally provides files for you that you can modify and use for your program. So very concrete tools. It's also co-trained by a NFSN staff member and a national parent leader. So they know what work is like, and they get it, and very valuable advice and very valuable training overall. These do fill up fast. So if you're interested in that, check it out. Our schedule is modified a bit for this one as well because of the holidays, but there are openings in both of these, I believe. So I encourage you to check that out. You can register for both of the trainings right on the homepage as well. And coming up in literally a couple weeks, we have the Together for Families conference. So this is our big tent conference that we have every other year, and it is co-hosted with the Center for the Study of Social Policy and Families Canada. And this conference filled up completely, and we were able to increase capacity just a bit. So there's literally a handful of spots left. So if you're interested, please go ahead and grab your tickets today before they sell out. But this conference has, there's several different tracks, and one of the focus areas is on the standards. So encourage you to register for that if you haven't already. There is still time to sneak into that. And I'm going to put our contact information up here on the slide. So if you have questions after today, feel free to reach out anytime. Let's see if there's any questions in the Q&A. All right. There's actually not any questions here yet. I just see a chat about with someone from a particular state wanting to connect and learn more. So looking forward to connecting with you after the webinar. And we will drop the link in the chat one last time to the handouts before we close for today. And that way you can access those and you'll be able to access the different tools that we talked about. You'll be able to access, there's a couple of different overview documents that we hope you will find helpful as well. So if you think of any questions after we end today, which always happens, right? That's always how it goes. So feel free to take a photo or a screenshot of this. Our contact information is also on the website on the staff page. You can access us through there as well. And as a reminder, when you sign off for today's webinar, an evaluation will pop up, and we very much appreciate you taking the time to complete that evaluation, as it very much helps inform future webinars. So thank you so much for your participation in today's webinar. We hope you have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday. And again, the recording for this and all of those handouts and everything will be on the National Network website by this time tomorrow, if not sooner. And as a reminder, all of those implementation tools are on the website already. You can download those on the standards implementation page. So we hope you all have a great rest of your Wednesday. Thank you again for participating today. Have a great day. Bye-bye.